In 2025, life in America feels more expensive than ever before. Families are not only stretched thin by rising prices, but also by the invisible weight of taxes and tariffs. When most people think about taxes, they picture what comes out of their paycheck or what they owe in April. But there's another layer of taxation, the kind you don't see on paper but feel every time you shop, drive, or pay your bills. That's the hidden tax of tariffs. Tariffs raise the price of imported goods, and in a global economy like ours, the cost ripples through almost everything. From groceries to cars, from lumber to electronics, families are paying more not just because of inflation, but because tariffs inflate the base cost of essential items. Add that on top of federal and state taxes, and Americans are carrying one of the heaviest financial burdens in decades. In this video, we're going to break down exactly how tariffs and taxes are reshaping the cost of living in America 2025. We'll examine federal income taxes, state tax differences, housing, groceries, jobs, healthcare, education, and even which states are handling the pressure better and which ones are breaking under it. By the end, you'll know not just how much more Americans are paying, but also why the gap between affordable and unaffordable states is widening so fast. Let's begin with the foundation, the federal tax system. Number 1. Federal taxes. In 2025, federal taxes remain the backbone of government revenue, but in 2025, they are colliding with inflation in ways that squeeze working families harder than ever. This year's tax brackets might look similar on paper, but inflation has pushed many households into higher brackets without actually increasing their purchasing power, a phenomenon called bracket creep. For example, a single worker earning $55,000 in 2025 may be taxed at a higher rate than someone earning the same inflation-adjusted salary 5 years ago. Yet, in real terms, that worker is not wealthier. Their groceries, rent, and health care cost far more. A middle-class family earning $100,000 jointly might see around $12,000 go to federal income tax, plus another $7,500 to Social Security and Medicare payroll taxes. That's nearly $20,000 gone before they pay a dime toward housing or food. But the real kicker is how tariffs act as a second hidden tax layered on top. Families don't pay tariffs directly, but when the U.S. imposes duties on imported steel, lumber, or electronics, those costs filter down. A fridge that once sold for $900 might now be $1,200. A car priced at $25,000 a few years ago might now start at $30,000. That difference is essentially a tariff tax embedded in the sticker price. Consider a household earning $90,000 in the Midwest. Federal and payroll taxes reduce that to about $70,000. But tariffs drive up their annual grocery bill by $2,500, their car payments by $1,200, and their home maintenance costs by another $1,000. Suddenly, their real take-home feels closer to $65,000. A significant gap created not by official taxes, but by hidden ones. Tariffs are regressive in nature. A billionaire and a teacher both pay more for milk, gas, and appliances. But for the teacher, those price hikes consume a far bigger portion of income. That's why the federal tax system in 2025 cannot be understood in isolation. On paper, rates might look steady, but in reality, the combination of official taxes plus tariff-driven costs means Americans are losing thousands more each year. Number 2, state taxes differences. While federal taxes hit everyone, where you live can make or break your budget. State taxes in 2025 vary so widely that moving from California to Texas or from New York to Florida can change a family's financial outlook almost overnight. Let's start with high-tax states. California, New York, New Jersey, and Illinois all impose steep income taxes. A family making $120,000 in California might pay $10,000 to the state on top of federal obligations. In New Jersey, property taxes average nearly $9,000 annually, eating into homeowners' budgets. Combined with tariffs driving up everyday prices, Families in these states often feel like they're working harder, but falling further behind. Now compare that with low tax states. Texas, Florida, and Tennessee have no state income tax. A household earning $120,000 in Texas keeps that extra $10,000 immediately. But there's a trade-off. States without income taxes often have higher sales taxes or insurance costs. In Florida, for example, families might save on income tax but spend thousands more on home insurance, which has skyrocketed in coastal areas. Migration data shows the effect. In the last decade, millions of Americans have left high-tax states for the South and Mountain West. Remote work accelerated this trend. Why pay $3,500 a month for a one-bedroom in New York City, plus 10% state and city tax, when you can rent a larger home in Nashville or Dallas and keep more of your paycheck? But tariffs complicate this equation. Whether you're in Texas or New York, you still pay more for imported groceries, electronics, and cars. That means even families in low-tax states aren't escaping the hidden tariff tax. The difference is that in states with no income tax, families often have more breathing room to absorb those higher costs. Let's imagine two teachers earning $70,000 each. In New York, after federal, state, and city taxes, plus higher housing and grocery bills, their effective income might feel closer to $90,000 combined. In Texas, the same couple could feel closer to $105,000, simply because of the state's lighter tax burden. That $15,000 gap can cover rent, daycare, or healthcare premiums. In 2025, the state tax divide is more than a policy debate. It's a lifestyle choice. High-tax states are seeing population declines, while low-tax states are booming, even though tariffs raise costs for everyone. For millions of Americans, moving has become a form of tax relief. Number 3, housing costs under tariff. Nowhere is the cost of living crisis more visible than in housing. In 2025, home prices and rents are stretched beyond reach, and tariffs have quietly played a major role in making shelter more expensive. Construction materials are the first link in the chain. Tariffs on imported lumber, steel, and aluminum have raised costs for builders. A modest home that might have cost $250,000 to build in 2018 can now run closer to $350,000. Builders pass that increase to buyers, pricing out first-time homeowners across the country. For renters, it's no easier. Higher construction costs mean fewer new apartments are built, limiting supply. At the same time, landlords face higher repair costs, property taxes, and insurance. The result is rent hikes. A one-bedroom that rented for $1,200 a few years ago is now closer to $1,600 in many mid-sized cities. Property taxes add another weight. In high-tax states like New Jersey or Illinois, annual bills of $8,000 to $10,000 are common. For homeowners already paying inflated mortgage rates and higher grocery bills, that can tip the balance from stability to debt. Let's look at California versus Tennessee. In California, the median home price now approaches $800,000. A family that manages to secure a mortgage faces payments over $4,500 per month. In Tennessee, the median home may cost $350,000, much lower, but still inflated compared to a decade ago because tariffs and demand have driven prices up. Even cheaper regions aren't immune, they're just less extreme. For many families, home ownership has shifted from a reachable dream to a distant goal. Even repairs are more expensive. Tariffs on imported lumber mean a simple deck renovation can cost $2,000 more than it did 5 years ago. Housing has always been the cornerstone of the American dream, but in 2025 it's a dream slipping further out of reach. Federal and state taxes shrink take-home pay, and tariffs quietly inflate the cost of every nail, every tile, and every gallon of paint. For millions of families, the numbers no longer add up. Number 4, everyday goods and services. If housing is the biggest financial weight, then groceries, gas, and utilities are the constant drain that families feel every single week. In 2025, These everyday essentials are some of the clearest reminders of how tariffs and inflation combine to squeeze American households. Start with groceries. The average American family spends over $1,000 more per year on food compared to just a few years ago. That's not just inflation at work. Tariffs on imported produce, packaged goods, and agricultural inputs raise costs across the supply chain. For example, tariffs on fertilizers increase the cost of growing crops, which makes meat, dairy, and vegetables more expensive. A gallon of milk that used to cost $3 might now be $4.50. Eggs, chicken, and bread, staples of the average household diet, have risen 25 to 40% since tariffs were expanded. Gas and energy are no better. Tariffs on imported oil and steel have made refining and distribution costlier. Families who used to pay $60 to fill up their car are now closer to $80. In states where driving is essential, Texas, Arizona, or Florida, that difference adds up quickly. At the same time, utilities like electricity and natural gas are higher because equipment and maintenance rely on imported parts. Replacing a water heater or repairing an air conditioning unit costs several $100s more than before. Then there are services, things like haircuts, dining out, car repairs, or childcare. When goods cost more, service providers raise prices to cover their higher expenses. A mechanic who pays more for imported parts will pass that on to customers. A daycare center that spends more on food, supplies, and utilities will increase monthly tuition. The ripple effect of tariffs means that even local homegrown services cost more because their supply chains rely on imported goods at some stage. To put it in real terms, imagine a family in Ohio with 2 children. Their grocery bill is up $250 a month, gas adds another $80, utilities another $60, and childcare another $200. That's nearly $600 more every month, or $7,000 more per year, without any increase in income. Multiply that across millions of households, and you see why so many Americans feel like they're running in place. Everyday goods and services are where tariffs hit hardest because families can't cut these expenses. You might delay buying a new car or postpone a vacation, but you can't skip meals, stop driving to work, or keep your kids out of school. That's why inflation in basic goods feels so suffocating. It's unavoidable, and it's constant. Number 5. Jobs and wages. 2025. When costs rise, the natural hope is that wages rise too. But in 2025, the story of American jobs is mixed. Some industries benefit from tariffs, while others suffer. And for most workers, wage growth simply isn't keeping pace with rising costs. On the positive side, tariffs are designed to protect domestic industries. Steel plants in Pennsylvania or auto manufacturers in Michigan may benefit because foreign competition faces higher costs. That can mean more jobs and sometimes higher wages in those sectors. Construction jobs in states like Texas or Ohio also see a boost as domestic suppliers replace imports. But the benefits are uneven. Retail, hospitality, and service industries are squeezed because higher costs mean fewer customers spending money. A restaurant in New York City might see fewer diners because grocery and rent costs eat into family budgets. That often leads to layoffs or stagnant paychecks for waiters, cooks, and bartenders. Even in industries where wages are rising, inflation erases the gains. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports average wage growth of around 4% in 2025. But with essential goods up 6 to 10%, that's effectively a pay cut. A worker earning $50,000 last year may now earn $52,000, but if their annual expenses have jumped from $45,000 to $50,000, they're actually worse off. Let's put this into perspective. Take a nurse in Texas earning $75,000. Their raise this year brings them to $78,000. On paper, that looks like progress. But with rent $200 higher per month, groceries up $150, gas another $100, and childcare $250 higher, that raise is wiped out. Instead of having more breathing room, they end the year with less disposable income. The bigger issue is uncertainty. Employers facing higher costs often hesitate to hire or invest. Small businesses, especially, feel the squeeze. A family owned store in Arizona that relies on imported goods may have to lay off workers or cut hours. Tariffs meant to protect U.S. industries sometimes end up reducing opportunities in other parts of the economy. The result is a frustrating paradox. Jobs exist, unemployment is relatively low, but most workers don't feel financially secure. They see rising paychecks eaten away by even faster rising expenses. Number 6, healthcare costs inflation. Healthcare has long been one of the most expensive parts of American life, and in 2025, it continues to climb higher, partly because tariffs ripple into this sector too. Insurance premiums are rising at double the pace of wages. A family health plan that cost $18,000 annually just a few years ago now averages closer to $23,000. Employers cover part of this, but workers pay more in premiums, co-pays, and deductibles. For families, that's thousands of dollars lost each year before even visiting a doctor. Why are tariffs relevant here? Because healthcare is global. Medical equipment, surgical tools, pharmaceuticals, and even raw materials for generic drugs often come from overseas. When tariffs raise the cost of those imports, hospitals and clinics pay more. That cost is then built into insurance premiums and patient bills. Consider prescription drugs. Many active ingredients are imported from China or India. When tariffs increase those costs, American pharmacies raise prices. A prescription that once cost $40 a month might now cost $60. Multiply that across several medications, and seniors on fixed incomes feel the pinch hardest. Medical procedures are also affected. A hip replacement or MRI machine contains imported components. Tariffs make those machines more expensive, which drives up the overall price of procedures. Even basic items like hospital beds, gloves, or syringes are often imported in part. None of these costs are absorbed quietly. They're passed to patients. Retirees face an even tougher road. Medicare covers part of their expenses, but supplemental insurance plans are rising rapidly. A retiree living on $3,000 a month in Social Security and savings may now spend $800 or more just to stay insured. That leaves little room for housing, food, or unexpected emergencies. Healthcare is the one expense families can't ignore. You can delay buying a car or cut back on dining out, but when a child is sick or a parent needs surgery, you have no choice. In 2025, the rising cost of healthcare, amplified by tariffs and inflation, makes it one of the biggest threats to financial stability in America. Number 7, education and child care costs. For families with children, education and child care are some of the most unavoidable and fastest growing expenses in 2025. Rising costs in these areas are reshaping how Americans think about starting families, pursuing higher education, and even where they choose to live. Childcare comes first. Across the country, daycare centers and preschools have raised prices to cover higher food, utility, and labor costs. A center that once charged $900 per month per child may now cost $1,300 or more. For two working parents with two kids under 5, that's more than $30,000 a year, the equivalent of a second mortgage. Tariffs have a role here too. Childcare facilities rely on imported food, toys, cleaning supplies, and equipment. When those costs climb, providers raise tuition. For parents, this means either paying more, cutting work hours to care for kids themselves, or relying on family support if available. For single parents, the options are even narrower, often forcing tough choices between career and child care. Then there's education. Public schools face budget pressures as costs rise for everything from classroom technology to school lunches. When districts must spend more, they often cut programs or raise local property taxes, pushing costs back onto families. The result is record student loan debt. Graduates enter the workforce already burdened with monthly payments that compete with housing, healthcare, and other living expenses. Rising tariffs might not directly add to student debt, but their ripple effect on operating costs makes higher education less accessible each year. Number 8, states, least hit versus most affected. Now let's zoom out. Not every state is experiencing the tariff and tax squeeze the same way. In fact, 2025 has sharpened the divide between affordable regions and those struggling under heavy financial pressure. States least hit by the crisis include Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. These states have no state income tax, which gives families more breathing room to handle rising costs. Housing, while more expensive than a decade ago, remains more attainable compared to coastal states. In cities like Houston, Nashville, or Tampa, a middle-class household can still find homes under $400,000, something nearly impossible in California or New York. These states are also benefiting from population inflows. Remote workers, retirees, and young families are moving south and west, chasing lower taxes and warmer climates. Demand is pushing up housing prices, but overall affordability is still stronger than in high-tax states. Now consider the most affected states: California, New York, New Jersey, and Illinois. Here, families face the triple hit of high state income taxes, steep property taxes, and inflated living costs. In California, a median home now costs close to $800,000, while gas prices remain among the highest in the country. In New York City, rent for a modest apartment can easily top $3,500 per month. Layer tariffs on top of these local pressures, and families are stretched past the breaking point. Even Midwestern states like Michigan or Ohio feel the squeeze in specific ways. While housing is cheaper, rising costs for groceries, utilities, and healthcare eat into the advantage. Tariffs help some industries like steel and autos, but make life more expensive for consumers. Number 9, future outlook. Looking ahead, the question every American asks is simple: will it get better or worse? The answer depends on global trade decisions, domestic policy, and how resilient families can be under continued financial strain. If tariffs remain high, the cost of living is unlikely to ease. Importers will continue passing costs to consumers, and inflation could remain sticky. Some industries may thrive: domestic steel, construction, and certain manufacturing, but consumers will bear the price. If tariffs are reduced or renegotiated, costs for goods could fall slightly, but the impact may take years to reach households. Meanwhile, housing, healthcare, and education are structural problems unlikely to reverse quickly. Politically, tariffs are often popular because they sound like protection for American workers, but voters are beginning to connect the dots between trade wars and their grocery bills. As the 2026 elections approach, tariffs and inflation could be defining issues. On the family level, Americans are adapting in creative ways. More households are embracing side hustles, remote work, and shared living arrangements. Younger generations are delaying big milestones like buying homes or starting families until they feel more secure. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: tariffs, taxes, and inflation will remain at the center of America's financial conversation. Whether leaders act to relieve the pressure or whether families simply learn to carry it will shape the next decade of American life. We've now covered the full picture: federal taxes, state differences, housing, groceries, jobs, healthcare, education, and which states are coping better or worse. The takeaway is simple but powerful. In 2025, the cost of living in America is being shaped not just by visible taxes, but by hidden ones, embedded in the price of almost everything we buy. For families, it means hard choices: where to live, what to spend on, whether to stay in high-tax states or move to more affordable regions. For workers, it means raises that don't keep up with costs. And for parents, it means wondering how to afford both childcare today and education tomorrow. So now, we want to hear from you. Do you feel tariffs are protecting American jobs, or are they hurting your family's budget? Have you considered moving to another state to escape high taxes and costs? Which part of your budget feels most squeezed: housing, groceries, healthcare, or education? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read everyone. And if you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to hit the like button Share this video with others who are feeling the pinch, and subscribe to LivingWise Global for more deep dives into American life, cost of living, and relocation trends. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.